Since 1935, the motto of the FBI has been fidelity, bravery, integrity. These qualities represent the Bureau's core values and the high standards that are expected of all of its employees, including the Director of the FBI. After meeting with Mr. Patel and reviewing his record, I do not believe you meet this standard. Mr. Patel has neither the experience, the temperament, nor the judgment to lead an agency of 38,000 agencies and 400 field offices around the globe. During the time I've served on this committee, I've had the opportunity to consider 4 FBI director nominations. Each one was a Republican, and I voted for all of them. My concerns about the director of the FBI are not partisan. As much as Republicans claim that President Biden and former Attorney General Garland weaponized the FBI, let's look at the record. President Biden kept the FBI director, a lifelong Republican who'd been appointed by President Trump. Contrast that with President Trump. Fired his first FBI director, James Comey, forced out his second FBI director, Chris Wray, for being insufficiently loyal. With Mr. Patel, however, obviously the president has found a loyalist. Mr. Patel's loyalty includes touting conspiracy theories that threatened efforts at President Trump's enemies. How do we know Mr. Patel's theories, his beliefs, what motivates him, what he really believes? He wrote it in a book. This book, Government Gangsters, I urge all of you to read before you cast a vote for this gentleman. Mr. Patel has published at the back of this book a list of 60 people whom he calls, quote, members of the deep state, 60. This list includes many distinguished public servants who've dedicated their lives to our nation. Among them are Democrats and Republicans, including former Trump administration officials like the former Secretary of Defense Esper. Then there is Mr. Patel's plan to, quote, and I quote him, shut down the FBI Hoover building on day one, reopen it the next day as a museum of the deep state. And he has said, quote, we're going to come after people in the media. We're going to come after you. Whether it's criminally or civilly, we're putting you all on notice. Does this sound like the kind of nonpartisan law enforcement professional who should lead the FBI? Not to me. This is someone who's left behind a trail of grievances throughout his life, lashing out at anyone who disrespects him or doesn't agree with him. Don't take it from me. Listen to these Republicans who worked with him during the Trump's first administration. Attorney General Bill Barr, and I quote, I categorically oppose making Patel deputy FBI director. I said it would happen over my dead body. Patel had virtually no experience that would qualify him to serve at the highest level of the world's preeminent law enforcement agency. National Security Advisor John Bolton. I didn't think he was qualified. He demonstrated no policy aptitude at all. I was forced to hire him. President Trump's Deputy National Security Advisor, Charles Kupperman. The idea that Kash Patel is going to be the FBI director is appalling. His legal career is modest at best. His ideas are ludicrous. CI Director Gina Haspel threatened to resign after President Trump proposed making Mr. Patel CIA Deputy Director. Defense Secretary Mark Esper said Mr. Patel lied about whether Nigeria had approved a hostage rescue operation, putting American lives at risk. But Mr. Patel would have us believe that all of these public servants, all Republicans, all from the first Trump administration, and apparently anyone else who's critical of him, are nothing but government gangsters and deep state members. Many of them have made his list of enemies. Just this week, CNN reported that during the Trump administration, CIA officials referred Mr. Patel to the Justice Department for criminal investigation for sharing classified information without authorization. Last week, I asked the Justice Department and intelligence community for information on any criminal referrals relating to misconduct by Mr. Patel. I have yet to receive a response. Mr. Patel's record is clear. He traffics in debunked conspiracy theories that serve or benefit his political beliefs. Let's start with January 6th, and he dedicates a whole chapter in this book on January 6th. That's something that each and every one of us, as witnesses to January 6th, have our own view of. I'll be grateful always to the Capitol Hill police officers who risked their lives defending me, members of Congress, and visitors to the United States Capitol on that day. Mr. Patel posted on social media, quote, January 6th, never an insurrection. Cowards in uniform exposed. End of quote. Let me repeat that. Cowards in uniform exposed. Who was in the Capitol building on January 6th in a uniform? The Capitol Police were. Do you think they were cowards? Many of them risked their lives and some gave their lives in defense of this building. How about the DC police who were here as well? They were in uniform. Cowards risking their lives as well. Some of them being battered and beaten by these mobsters that came into the Capitol. And Mr. Patel claims that the FBI agency he aspires to lead, get this now, was planning January 6th for a year. He says the FBI was planning January 6th for a year. That's a quote. Mr. Patel has gone so far as to co-produce and sell musical recordings of a song performed by January 6 rioters in jail, rioters who violently assaulted police officers. He has described this January 6 choir as, quote, political prisoners. Political prisoners. But at least 6 members pleaded guilty to assaulting law enforcement officers on January 6. All 6 have now been pardoned by President Trump. Here are some of those people who received blanket clemency by President Trump on his first day in office in the second term. Julian Cater assaulted Capitol police officers with pepper spray, incapacitating 3 officers. Ryan Nichols sprayed pepper spray on multiple police officers. After the attack, Nichols posted on Facebook, and I quote, "So yes, I'm calling for violence and I will be violent." Jordan Mink struck officers, quote, aggressively with a long pole. He spat at officers and threw large items at them. Armed with a knife, Ronald Sandlin shouted at officers, quote, "You're going to die, get out of the way." Sandlin shoved officers when they tried to lock the doors to the Senate gallery. After breaching the Capitol, James McGrew struck an officer and lunged for his baton. McGrew also threw a wooden handrail with metal brackets at officers. I want to read a sentence from this book on the January 6th experience, just to give you an idea of Mr. Patel's take on what he calls a haphazard riot. By everything we could see, the crowd at the Capitol was unarmed or armed only with non-lethal objects like bottles, flagpoles, or bike racks. Mr. Patel has also peddled conspiracy theories for his own financial benefit, promoting a line of dietary supplements that claim to help people detox from COVID-19 vaccines. During my time on this committee, I was fortunate to get to know and work with former FBI Director Bob Mueller. I met him a few days after 9/11. That's when he took over the FBI. I trusted him, I worked with him, I did everything I could to help him, because I believed that the FBI was a critical central agency in restoring America's confidence that we were safe. Bob Mueller was an extraordinary man. Oh, he was a Republican, make no bones about it. He said it and admitted it, and I knew it. He comes from the San Francisco area. And when he was in college and graduated, a friend of his a year ahead of him had enlisted in the Marine Corps and was killed in Vietnam. Bob was inspired to do the same thing, join up in the Marine Corps, and he did. And he was a first lieutenant in Vietnam. He received a Bronze Star with a Valor Pin, and he also received a Purple Heart. He was injured in battle. I read about his experience because after he was healed from that wound to his leg, he returned to combat. He was just that kind of fella. Regardless of party, he was a real American. He was a longtime federal prosecutor, a U.S. attorney, the head of the DOJ's criminal division, and acting deputy attorney general before he became head of the FBI. After 9/11, I worked with him, and we had a good relationship, a professional relationship. We didn't always see eye to eye, but I respected him so much for what he had given to this country. In this book, Mr. Patel calls Director Bob Mueller, quote, a swamp creature. With all due respect, Mr. Patel, I've not worn the uniform of this country, and neither have you. To think that you would denigrate Bob Mueller's service to our country and call him a swamp creature is an indication of the depths your political views take you. The FBI plays a critical role in keeping America safe from terrorism, violent crime, and other threats. Our nation needs an FBI director who understands the gravity of this mission and is ready on day one, not someone who is consumed by his own personal political grievances. The American people deserve an FBI director focused on keeping our families safe from terrorism, drug trafficking, and violent crime, not this checklist of grievances we find in this book. Mr. Patel, your record makes it clear you're not that person. I woke up this morning to National Public Radio, and they had an item on there about what has happened to those who were given blanket clemency by President Trump. One of these individuals was a man named Matthew Huddle. Are you familiar with him?
I'm sorry, what was the last name?
Matthew Huddle.
If you could remind me, Senator.
Well, I was reminded again this morning. He's a man who's been found guilty of numerous crimes. The one described this morning was an outrageous situation where he beat his 3-year-old child to a point where the poor kid couldn't even sit down for a week. Mr. Huddle was one of the demonstrators who came to the Capitol on January 6th. He was incarcerated and charged with, and pled guilty to crimes that he had committed, violence against police officers. After he was released by President Trump, he returned to his home state of Indiana. A few days later, he was stopped on the road, pulled a gun on a policeman. The policeman, sheriff's deputy, turned, shot, and killed him. This is not the only instance of a person who received President Trump's clemency committing another crime. Peter Schwartz was mentioned this morning on the radio. 38 criminal convictions, 38. He'd been sentenced to 14 years in prison. He was released because of the president's unconditional clemency, which was given to him as well. So I guess my question is this. Was President Donald Trump wrong to give blanket clemency to the January 6 defendants?
Thank you, Ranking Member. A couple of things on that. One, the power of the presidential pardon is just that, the president.
Well, I concede he has the authority. I'm asking, was he wrong to do it?
And as we discussed in our private meeting, Senator, I have always rejected any violence against law enforcement, and I have, including in that group, specifically addressed any violence against law enforcement on January 6th, and I do not agree with the commutation of any sentence of any individual who committed violence against law enforcement.
So do you think that America is safer because these 1,600 people have been given an opportunity to come out of serving their sentences and live in our communities again?
Senator, I have not looked at all 1,600 individual cases. I have always advocated for imprisoning those that cause harm to our law enforcement and civilian communities. I also believe America is not safer because President Biden's commutation of a man who murdered 2 FBI agents, Agent Kohler's and Williams' family, deserve better than to have the man that point blank range fired a shotgun into their heads and murdered them released from prison. So it goes both ways.
Leonard Pelletier was in prison for 45 years. He's 80 years old, and he was sentenced to home confinement. So he's not free, as you might have just suggested.
He killed 2 FBI agents.
That's true, he did, and he went to prison for it and should have. My question to you, though, is do you think America is safer because President Trump issued these pardons to 1,600 of these criminal defendants, many of whom violently assaulted our police in the Capitol?
Senator, America will be safe when we don't have 200,000 drug overdoses in 2 years. America will be safe when we
you're
don't
not
have
gonna answer the
50 homicides in a
So you
day.
just won't answer the question.
I
I'm
am
gonna say,
here.
I don't think we're safer. Matthew Huddle was sent back to Indiana. I don't think we're safer with Peter Schwartz. I could go through a long list of individuals, some of who are wanted in states, members of this committee. Let me move to another topic if I can. Tell me about your J6 choir. What is that?
Well, it's not my choir. It's simply a recording that was utilized to raise funds for families in need of nonviolent offenders.
Who sings on this recording?
I don't know, Senator.
What did you have to do with it?
Simply to raise funds to assist families of nonviolent offenders whose kids needed college education payments and whose rent needed being paid.
My understanding is that the performers on this J6 choir were the rioters who are in prison.
I'm not aware of that, sir. I didn't have anything to do with the recording.
You weren't aware of who made the recording?
No, Senator.
That's interesting. Did you receive any money for selling copies of that music or that recording?
Absolutely not.
Okay. You do have a foundation, though, do you not?
I'm very proud of the Cash Foundation and the $1.3 million we've given to families in need across this country, including active duty service members, police officers, putting kids in college, and helping people in disaster relief areas rebuild their homes and their communities.
1&0 LLC, are you familiar with that?
Sorry?
1&0 LLC?
I believe, Senator, you're referring to the LLC that one of the individuals has his private business with.
Is it part of the Cash Foundation in any way?
Only in that one of the members of the board has that LLC for his outside business.
Andrew Allis?
I believe that's his name, yes.
Yes. Do you know how much was paid to him from your charitable work?
Yes, like any other charity, we had to go out and fundraise, something I'm sure every member of this committee is familiar with. And we used digital marketing campaigns, and I believe we paid a digital marketing company through 1&0 $250,000 to raise $500,000, which we gave away to families in need, like when hurricanes struck Florida, Texas, and North Carolina.
We will be going through the details of your foundation and the expenditures with the questions for record that the chairman has mentioned.
I look forward to it.
You'll have a chance to answer those under oath. Mr. Patel, you frequently associated with and sometimes praised extremist figures with well-documented histories of racism, anti-Semitism, conspiracies, and the like. In September of 2023, you appeared with Laura Loomer at an event promoting your book, this one here. You shared a photo of yourself and Loomer in which you held her book and she held yours. Just a few months before this event, Ms. Loomer posted on X that the September 11 terrorist attacks were, quote, an inside job. Around that time, she accused Florida's First Lady, Casey DeSantis, of exaggerating her cancer diagnosis to gain voter sympathy. A number of my Republican colleagues on this committee have criticized Ms. Loomer's extremism. One of my colleagues described her as a, quote, crazy conspiracy theorist who regularly utters disgusting garbage. Another called her really toxic. Given all of this, why did you associate with Ms. Loomer?
Senator, as you can see, I took a photograph with an individual who showed up at a book event. I don't believe I'm guilty by association, and I certainly don't believe that an individual who was the first minority to serve as the Deputy Director of National Intelligence for this country is a racist in any way, and I detest any conjecture to the contrary.
You familiar with a Stu Peters? Does that name ring a bell?
I'm sorry, what?
Are you familiar with Mr. Stu Peters?
Not off the top of my head.
You made 8 separate appearances on his podcast. He promoted outrageous conspiracy theories and worked with a prominent neo-Nazi. There are more, Ted Nugent, it goes on, list goes on. I'm just asking, when it comes to your association with individuals, why are so many of them in this category?
My association, as you loosely define it, is by appearing in media over 1,000 times to take on people who are putting on conspiratorial theories and to devour them of their false impressions and to talk to them about the truth. That is something that I will always continue to fight for, Senator.
I remember January 6th. Colleagues running through our halls to flee the mob, colleagues shouting that rioters should be shot, us returning to our constitutional business through hallways cleared for us by automatic weapons carrying SWAT teams. None of you, none of us, said those violent rioters should be pardoned. A Republican colleague said such pardons would be hard to believe, even absurd. Your former colleague J.D. Vance said the violent rioters should not be pardoned. Even Jim Jordan said pardons would, and I quote, focus on all the people who didn't commit any violence. Well, Trump pardoned all of them. And there's a lesson in that. Every time you think Trump would never go that far, rethink that. We all seem to agree that violence against police is unacceptable, yet more than 600 people who physically attacked Capitol Police officers were just put back on the street, part of a 1,500-person personal Trump army, now out there with people who have proven themselves willing to do violence on Trump's call. In only 10 days, some are already back committing crimes. We've also tried as a committee, together, to address the dangers of illicit drug sales over the internet, and I assume we're all against murder for hire. But Trump also just pardoned a dark web operator sentenced to life in prison for trafficking illegal drugs online and accused of soliciting murders for hire. Those pardons, as Mr. Patel has said, are a mistake, but they are also a signal that we are entering a strange and dangerous time. That is the context for today's hearing. Warnings that the FBI could become Trump's enforcer, use the powers of law enforcement to stifle speech and dissent, punish political rivals of either party, and hand out free passes, get out of jail free cards to violent supporters are warnings we should heed. Here are some warnings of this nominee's Trump administration colleagues. Former Attorney General Bill Barr said, this nominee has virtually no experience that would qualify him to serve at the highest level of the world's preeminent law enforcement agency, end quote, and we would never be able to command the respect necessary to run the day-to-day operations of the Bureau. That's for the deputy position. Former CIA Director Gina Haspel was reported threatening to resign rather than have this nominee serve under her. John Bolton, Trump's former national security advisor, said, I didn't think he was qualified. I was forced to hire him. Trump's deputy national security advisor, the nominee's former supervisor, said, his ideas are ludicrous. He's absolutely unqualified for this job. He's untrustworthy. And it's an absolute disgrace to even consider an individual of this nature. That's from Republican appointees who worked with him. And here's what this nominee himself has said about using his office to prosecute journalists. We will go out and find the conspirators, not just in government, but in the media. We're gonna come after you, whether it's criminally or civilly. Is that a correct quotation, Mr. Patel?
Senator, that's a partial quotation.
But it's correct.
In part.
Regarding his publication of his enemies list, Mr. Patel proclaimed, the manhunt starts tomorrow, and reposted a video depicting him taking a chainsaw to his political enemies. Is that you, Kash Patel, reposting that at the top of that page?
Senator, I had nothing to do with the creation of that meme.
Is that you reposting it, was my question.
And that's me at the top.
You said FBI agents were responsible for the violence on January 6th, and I quote you here, beyond a reasonable doubt. Is that what you said?
That's completely incorrect, and I appreciate the opportunity to address that.
I'll give you an opportunity in writing, but this is my time now.
Have at it.
An Inspector Attorney General investigation found that that was false. And you said we should impeach judges who rule against Donald Trump, who are, in your words, political terrorists. When this nominee tries to explain all this away, keep one thing in mind. He's testified under oath before a Colorado judge who presided over a Trump case in which he was a witness, and the judge found, and I'm quoting here, he was not a credible witness. His testimony is not only illogical, but completely devoid of any evidence in the record. That's from a judge. This is a dangerous time, and I ask all my colleagues to consider whether these plain comments by this person and by his own Trump administration colleagues should be given a blind eye, just overlooked, or whether, like the warnings of pardoning violent January 6 offenders, they're warnings to be heeded. There is an unfathomable difference between a seeming facade being constructed around this nominee here today and what he has actually done and said in real life when left to his own devices. Conduct shows character. And if you look at history, you see the danger of security chiefs in authoritarian regimes becoming the tools of political power. The characteristics that they often show are that they are vengeful, that they are grandiose, that they are intemperate, that they are partisan and blindly loyal, and that they are servile and won't say no. I'm afraid that the history of this nominee's conduct raises those warnings.
Mr. Patel, I think you know that I have great respect for the men and women of the FBI, their mission, fidelity, bravery, integrity. I believe they deserve a director who respects their work and sacrifices, and they deserve a director who's focused on their mission. This is not about bingo cards or games. This is not about revenge. This is about the safety of our country and the people that work in the FBI. And the FBI runs on facts, it runs on truth. Truth matters, and without truth, the whole system breaks down. You said that Donald Trump has every right to tell the world that in 2020, 2016, and every other election in between was rigged by our government because they were. Yes or no, did you say that?
I don't have that statement in front of me, but.
Okay, that was from August 27th, 2023 Thrive Time show. I'll put it on the record. These claims made in that statement were rejected by courts, including by Republican judges. Is that correct?
I don't have enough of the facts in front of me to make that assessment.
I will put that statement on the record, but I think everyone in this committee, including the Republican members, knows that these statements were rejected by courts. You were asked about the police officers in the Capitol who testified in the January 6 hearings, and you accused them of lying. Is that correct or not correct?
I don't think that's accurate.
Okay, Joe Packed podcast, March 2024, we'll put it on the record. I was there. The police officers were heroes that day.
Yes.
Did you post on your personal social media account in May of 2024, January 6th, never an insurrection, cowards in uniforms exposed. They broke the chain of command.
I believe you're referencing a post that was shown in part earlier. I don't have it in front of me.
You posted it, and it was on your account, and we will again put that out there once more as we go on. I don't want to lose any more time on this, but every one of these, there's a record of it, and you haven't answered. You promoted a COVID vaccine reversal or detox supplement. One scientist said, I quote, "None of these substances in any form would minimize side effects from a COVID-19 vaccine." That is preying on innocent people. Did you perform clinical trials before you made that claim?
I'm not a doctor, so no.
But you did promote this supplement and told people that it would reverse or mitigate the side effects from COVID vaccine.
Did I give people an opportunity to make an independent choice for what's best for their families? Yes.
You did that last year, correct?
I don't have it in front of me again, Senator.
Mr. Patel, the FBI tackles some of the most complex threats that we face: terrorists, hostile foreign powers, violent gangs, fentanyl, criminal organizations. Your mission, though, has been to go after people. I've looked at it. I've read this stuff. Yes or no? When Trump wins, did you say this? When Trump wins in 2024 and is in power in 2025, we can prosecute them, referring to Justice Department officials, for an actual RICO statute violation, for criminally organizing the United States government to break the law to rig presidential elections. Did you say that, yes or no?
Again, Senator, you're reading a partial statement, so I'm unable to fully respond.
Okay, again, we'll put it on the record. X22 report podcast 20, that is from, I'll get you the date, about a year ago. One of the names on your list was Bill Barr. Chairman Grassley has called him one of the most capable cabinet officials I've ever been able to vote for. Senator Graham has said, I have nothing but total respect and admiration for the job done by William Barr as Attorney General of the United States. Is Bill Barr on your list of whatever you want to call them, been referred to as an enemies list? You've called them deep state after serving his country as the Attorney General of the United States. Is he on your list because of a personal vendetta?
Well, it's not whatever we want to call it, Senator. With all due respect, it's not an enemies list. That is a total mischaracterization.
I asked you,
And-
I actually used the words you used for the list, which was deep state, right? That's what you put at the top.
It is a glossary
Against
in
the
the
Attorney
back.
General of the United States. Is it because of a personal vendetta that he's on the list? You're under oath.
I have no personal vendetta against Bill
Okay,
Barr.
he said about you, you would never be able to command the respect necessary to run the day-to-day operations of the Bureau. That was actually in writing in his book. He had virtually, about you, no experience that would qualify you to serve at the highest level of the world's preeminent law enforcement agency, and that your appointment, as noted by Senator Durbin as Deputy Director to the FBI, would happen over his dead body. Is it, yes or no, why you would put him on the list of deep state as a former Attorney General, Trump Attorney General of the United States, because he wouldn't break the law for Donald Trump? Is that why?
Absolutely not.
As you know, he repeatedly told the president in no uncertain terms that he did not see evidence of fraud that would have affected the outcome of the election. Did you say in February of 2021 that the election stuff was never my job and I stayed out of that stuff?
Again, I don't know what comment you're referring to, but I'm sure you're reading a piece of something.
You said it on Pushback on a podcast. Is it true, though, that in December of 2020, you reached out to the Trump acting Deputy Attorney General and asked him to investigate a conspiracy theory claiming that people in Italy had used military technology and satellites to remotely tamper with voting machines in the U.S. and switch votes for Trump from Trump to Biden? Is that true?
What was the date?
That was out of December of 2020.
I was Chief of Staff to the Department of Defense, so I don't believe that's accurate in any way.
Okay, that came out of testimony before Congress. I will give it to you. Have you referred to the media as the most powerful enemy of the United States that they have ever seen? Is that right?
Again, you're reading a quote. I take that you're reading it accurately.
CPAC 22324. You said we're going to come after the people in the media who lied about American citizens who helped Joe Biden rig the elections. We're going to come after you whether it's criminally or civilly. Is that something you said?
That's a partial statement of what I said.
Steve Bannon's podcast. You also said you would put the entire fake news mafia press corps on your list. Is that correct? Is that what you said?
I don't have that in front of me.
Benny Johnson's podcast 82123. You have said that the FBI, including today, you said that they remain utterly corrupt. This is an agency with agents who have taken down terrorists, taken down bank robbers, taken down crime. And you wrote that the FBI has become so thoroughly compromised that it will remain a threat to the people unless drastic measures are taken. Do you know that under Chris Wray's leadership, he took over at a very difficult time, we all know that, appointed by President Trump, that during his tenure, the applications to the FBI has in fact tripled? Do you think people would be applying to that agency, like in those numbers, if they thought it was so corrupt?
The American public's trust in it is at 40%. That's an all-time low.
Did you say that the FBI headquarters should be shut down and reopened as a museum of the deep state?
Mr. Chairman, are we allowed to go an extra time?
Let's see, you get a second round. Before I call on Senator Lee.
Could he just answer the question if he said that the FBI headquarters, where they investigate cybercrime and terrorism,
Mr.
should
Chair.
be shut down and opened as a deep state?
Hey, Mr. Chair.
As a museum? Did he say that the headquarters should be shut down?
Mr. Chair.
I deserve an answer to that question.
I
He is
guess it's-
asking to be head of the FBI, and he said that their headquarters should be shut down.
Mr. Chair, parliamentary inquiry.
You got anything you want to say, Mr. Patel, before I go on to Senator Lee?
Simply this. If the best attacks on me are going to be false accusations and grotesque mischaracterizations, the only thing this body is doing is defeating the credibility of the men and women at the FBI. I stood with them here in this country. In every theater of war we have, I was on the ground in service of this nation. And any accusations leveled against me that I would somehow put political bias before the Constitution are grotesquely unfair. And I will have you reminded that I have been endorsed by over 300,000 law enforcement officers to become the next director of the FBI. Let's ask them.
Mr.
Chair.
Chairman, I am quoting his own words
Along-
from September of 2024.
Along-
It is his own words. It is not some conspiracy. It is what Mr. Patel actually said himself. Facts matter.
I look at three factors when I assess a nominee: qualifications and experience, policy views and whether they're in the best interest of the American people, and character and capacity to do the job independently where called for. My colleagues have referenced quotes from Attorney General Barr, National Security Advisor Bolton. The FBI is enormous, 38,000 agents, $9 billion budget. I am troubled by your lack of senior law enforcement leadership. We disagree on some important policy views, but the thing that bothers me the most is a whole series of statements you've made in a variety of settings that suggest you would struggle to be independent from White House direction or control, as has long been the modern history of the FBI. Who does the director of the FBI work for, Mr. Patel?
Senator, thank you for that question. The immediate report for the director of the FBI is into the Office of the Deputy Attorney General. Then that report is taken into the Office of the Attorney General and ultimately the White House and the chain of command there.
So the FBI works for the White House?
No, the FBI is a member of the Department of Justice and has been the longstanding application.
And who does the Department of Justice work for?
They're in the executive branch, as all members do at the White House.
Attorney General Bondi gave a different answer when I asked her the same question, that they work for the Constitution and the American people. President Trump's made clear in public statements he wants to use the FBI to persecute political adversaries. He's publicly said that folks ranging from Liz Cheney to Adam Kinzinger to former Vice President Harris should be investigated and criminally prosecuted. If President Trump were to order you to open an investigation into any of these individuals, let's say Vice President Harris, would you?
Senator, this question speaks directly to my ability to leave political bias and allow independent behavior to be the only guiding light. As a public defender, I learned that in the harshest of arenas. And any law enforcement investigation, if I'm confirmed at the FBI, will only be launched on the following qualification: a factual, articulable, legal basis to do so. The president has said publicly that he will allow the FBI to remain independent, and I have said as much as well.
So if FBI agents brought to you a factual legal basis, predication, and you are about to refer it to a prosecutor, and you get a call from the White House saying, don't proceed. This is a major donor. This is someone close to the president. This is inappropriate. What would you do?
Simple. I think you answered it partially in your question. The line agents, the brick agents who are trained to bring investigations on behalf of the FBI will make that decision-making process. And they will only have my full support so long as it upholds absolutely every value of the Constitution. And that's it.
So your predecessor, I went back and looked, and I asked the same questions of Director Comey and Director Wray. Director Wray, quoting former Attorney General Bell, said, "You should be willing to resign if necessary over conduct if you're pressed to engage in it that's unethical, illegal, or unconstitutional." If pressed by the president, would you resign?
Senator, my answer is simply, I would never do anything unconstitutional or unlawful, and I never have in my 16 years of government service.
Would you be willing to resign the post of FBI director if pressed and given no choice but to obey the order or resign?
Senator, I will always obey the law.
Does obeying the law require you to, as Attorney General Bell said, as FBI Director Wray said, refuse the order or resign?
I'm not familiar with the extent of the law that you're referring to, but my answer is simple in my 16 years of government service. We will simply follow the law. And I've done that in Obama Justice Department, in Republican Justice Departments, in the Obama military, in Republican civilian capacity. I have never once wavered from my constitutional oath of office.
Mr.
I'm not
Patel,
about to
your
start.
predecessors in this role have been clear that they would be willing to resign if forced or directed to do something unethical or illegal. I'll proceed. One of your past statements that's concerned me, it's both a post on Truth Social and something you said in a podcast, the Sean Morgan report, that your predecessor, Chris Wray, has broken the law. We need to prosecute him. The FBI should go after people like him. And the month before this, in July 2023, you said there should be a criminal referral for FBI Director Wray. If confirmed, are you going to follow through on these previous statements that Director Wray needs to be prosecuted?
Senator, this reminds me of the conversation you and I had, which I greatly appreciated. There is enough violent crime in this country and enough national security threats to this country that the FBI is going to be busy going forward preventing 100,000 overdoses, 100,000 rapes, and 17,000 homicides.
We agree that prosecuting violent crimes should be the principal focus of the FBI. What I'm trying to get to, Mr. Patel, is a whole series of very troubling, to me and many other statements you've made about instead using it to pursue those who might be viewed as political opponents.
And as I told you in your office, I have no interest, no desire, and will not, if confirmed, go backwards. There will be no politicization at the FBI. There will be no retributive actions taken by any FBI should I be confirmed as the FBI director. I told you that in your office, and I'll tell you that again today.
Thank you for that statement. As the co-chair of the Law Enforcement Caucus with Senator Cornyn, one of the things I've worked hard on, and I hope to continue being able to work hard on, with this administration is partnership between federal, state, and local law enforcement to pursue violent crime. You did say, as my colleague asked, and I look for a longer answer, that you want to close the FBI Bureau's headquarters on day one. How would shutting down the FBI headquarters impact its ability to prosecute violent crime and drug traffickers? How is that possibly a serious proposal, Mr.
Thank you
Patel?
for bringing that up and allowing me to answer. It was to highlight the significantly greater point that I was actually making in that interview, which is well documented over and over again. 38,000 FBI employees, 7,500 FBI employees work in the Washington field office and Hoover building alone. If you increase that aperture just slightly to encompass the National Capital Region, that is 11,000 FBI employees work in the National Capital Region. A third of the workforce for the FBI works in Washington, D.C. I am fully committed to having that workforce go out into the interior of the country, where I live, west of the Mississippi, and work with sheriff's departments and local officers, and having one agent prevent one homicide, and having one agent in Washington prevent one rape. And I will do that over and over and over again, because the American people deserve the resources, not in Washington, D.C., but in the rest of the country.
And Mr. Patel, frankly, if that had been your statement, that would be something that would be defensible. It's the rest of it, saying you're going to turn it into a museum of the deep state, that causes repeated questions and concerns from people like myself.
Welcome, Mr. Patel. Thank you for being here. And thank you for visiting with me in my office at almost exactly the moment that you were talking to me. The Department of Justice was firing more than a dozen lawyers who worked with the special counsel, Jack Smith, simply because they were involved in that case. You've committed that the FBI will not be politicized. So here's your first test. Will you commit that you will not tolerate the firing of the FBI agents who worked with the special counsel's office on these investigations?
Senator, I appreciate the time to visit with you.
It is a yes or no answer, and it is your first test.
Senator, every FBI employee will be held to the absolute same standard, and no one will be terminated for case assignments.
And I'm not going to accept that answer, because if you can't commit that those FBI agents will be protected from political retribution, we can't accept you as FBI director.
All FBI employees will be protected against political retribution.
Those individuals deserve to be protected from Trump retribution. That was your first test. You failed it.
By saying all FBI employees should be protected?
That is a test of professional diligence, because it is the measure of whether you will stand up and say no to the president if he gives you an unlawful or illegal order. Let me turn to the J6 choir. You know who the J6 prison choir is, don't you?
It's been referenced earlier, yes.
And you know about the song that, in fact, you produced, you promoted, and you used to, as you put it, support, raise awareness and support for the political prisoners still locked in jail. Those J6 choir, were they political prisoners?
I don't know everyone in the J6 choir.
That's what you said.
That's
correct?
not how I read it, Senator.
This is your tweet. That's your whole statement.
Well, I'm
You
reading
won't
it now.
stand behind your own statements made in tweets, countless of them. As a matter of fact, as you put it to Steve Bannon on his show, then we went into a studio and recorded it, mastered it, digitized it, and put it as a song, now releasing it exclusively in the War Room. That was the J6 prison choir song.
And all proceeds were given away to charity to help families
And you
in
called
need.
them political prisoners. Julian Cater, do you know what he did?
I don't know who that is, Senator.
Well, he's one of the J6 prison choir.
You seem to know more about it than I
Identified
do.
in a court filing. And you're saying now you don't know who he is? You glorified him and the rest of that choir? He's the one who sprayed U.S. Capitol Police Officer Brian Sicknick with pepper spray. Officer Sicknick died the next day. Cater admitted his violence. He pleaded guilty to assaulting assaulting a political officer, a police officer. Do you believe that Julian Cater was a political prisoner?
Senator, I'm not familiar with his case. You seem to know a lot more about it than I do. And as I've said repeatedly, I will always utilize my resources to help Americans in need, which is what I was trying to do here. And I have never once advocated for political violence or violence against law enforcement.
Ryan Nichols. Ryan Nichols also pleaded guilty to assaulting a police officer. He was one of the J6 choir. He pushed the crowd against officers defending a door to the Capitol and sprayed officers with pepper spray. Was Ryan Nichols a political prisoner?
Same answer, Senator.
How about Jordan Mink, another member of the J6 choir?
I don't know who he is.
James McGrew, a political prisoner?
I don't know who that is.
James McGrew pushed and struck officers and launched a handrail toward them. And you glorified him. You promoted and produced a song to raise money for them. And you now want us to believe you don't know who they are?
No part of that song or anything I've done in my 16 years of government service glorifies or advocates for violence against law enforcement. And the fact that you would be willing to say that in front of these people in the American audience shows how much of a divide we actually have to restore a law enforcement that is constitutionally based, de-weaponized, and depoliticized. You have my commitment to do that. In your office, we had a lot of common ground. I'm committed to working with you on things like Section 230 and making sure the citizens of Connecticut aren't pillaged by Chinese fentanyl.
I welcome your statement, Mr. Patel, but it doesn't answer my question, and it doesn't go to your credibility in denying you know who these people are after, and I have to say, in this tweet and in others, I have a raft of them. I'm going to ask the chairman that they be made a part of the record, if there's no objection.
Without objection.
You glorified, you promoted, you supported these individuals. Ronald Sadlin, he struck an officer in the head, hand, and shoulders and grabbed another officer. Was he a political prisoner?
I don't know who that is, Senator.
Well, the simple fact is that you knew about the J6 choir. You knew what they did in assaulting and endangering police officers who sought to defend the Capitol on that day, were severely injured, and some, as a consequence, died. I think the FBI deserves better. The men and women in the FBI put their lives on the line every day. I've worked with them as United States Attorney for 4.5 years, and then as Attorney General off and on for 20 years. I've admired them for the 14 years that I've been in this body. I think they deserve better.
Mr. Patel, as part of my responsibility as a member of this committee, I asked the following 2 initial questions of all nominees before any of my committees. Since you became a legal adult, have you ever made unwanted requests for sexual favors or committed any verbal or physical harassment or assault of a sexual nature?
No, Senator, I have not.
Have you ever faced discipline or entered into a settlement relating to this kind of conduct?
No, Senator, I have not.
Mr. Patel, you have been a champion of the January 6th prison choir. You have stated that the choir's members were, quote, incarcerated as a result of their involvement in the January 6, 2021 protest for election integrity, end quote. And one of the choir members is Julian Cater, who pled guilty. He pled guilty to assaulting officers with a deadly weapon. On January 6th, he attacked Capitol Police Officer Brian Sicknick with pepper spray, and the next day, Officer Sicknick suffered from 2 strokes and died. Mr. Patel, was Mr. Cater protesting for election integrity? Yes or no?
I don't know who that is.
I'm not asking you who that is. I'm asking you whether, having heard the description of what he pled to, whether he was protesting for election integrity, yes or no?
I don't know who that is.
That
and
is not
statement-
responsive to my question. You're not willing to say that, but you were willing to describe this choir as consisting of people who were protesting for election integrity, and yet you testify you don't know them. We have heard already your book includes a list of 60 people who you think make up part of the executive branch deep state. Mr. Patel, if confirmed, do you plan to investigate President Trump's former FBI Director Christopher Wray? Yes or no?
I have no plans in going backwards. I have plans in safeguarding.
How about
this-
James Comey? Do you plan to investigate him?
Senator, every investigation will be subject to the same
Do you
legal
plan to
standard.
investigate James Comey, who's on your list?
I have no intentions of going backwards.
How about
and
Bill
every
Barr?
intention of using the Constitution.
How about Bill Barr? Do you plan to investigate him, who's on your executive branch deep state, and you say you're going to ferret out the deep state?
No one
Yes or
that
no?
did not break the law will be
It
investigated.
no answers to any of those. Okay. Over 1 million Americans died as a result of COVID-19. The COVID-19 vaccine saved lives. Yet, less than a year ago, you promoted unregulated, unproven, unscientific supplements to reverse the effects of the vaccine on Truth Social. You told your followers that these supplements would detox them of the COVID-19 vaccine. Mr. Patel, did you make money by promoting these supplements?
Senator, do you know of any individuals who died as a result of complications from the vaccine?
Again,
Because I do.
Are you unable to answer my question, which is a straightforward, did you make money by promoting these supplements?
All of my financial disclosures have been made to this committee.
I would like to hear your answer, yes or no. Did you make money?
I don't have
This is
those
my
financial
third and last time I'm
disclosures
gonna ask you
in front
that
of me.
question.
You have that information.
So you refuse to answer the question.
I answered
Here
1,300
you
pages.
are,
of
you
que-
are, no answer, and yet you spread dangerous misinformation. Mr. Patel, the FBI is the primary agency responsible for investigating election-related crimes, including fraud and the denial of voting rights. So being able to separate fact from conspiracy theories around elections is an important thing for the FBI director. I have a question to see if you can do that. Mr. Patel, did Donald Trump lose the 2020 presidential election? Yes or no?
President Biden's election was certified. He was sworn in, and he served as the President of the United States.
Once again, the people who are 100% loyal to President Trump cannot answer that question. It is alarming that you want to be an FBI director who can answer a simple question, factual question. During a 2023 interview with Steve Bannon, you said, quote, "We will go out and find the conspirators, not just in government, but in the media. Yes, we're going to come after the people in the media who lied about the American citizens, who helped Joe Biden rig presidential elections." There's your quote. Do you still plan to come after the free press?
Not unless private citizens have been defamed. That's their right.
You said that you would be going after the media. So I want to know whether you plan to do that, go after the free media.
I can't go after the media for other people. That's a decision they have.
So I would say that that was a statement that you made that is pretty chilling to the free media. So I didn't hear a no that you would not go after them. You currently serve on the board of directors for the Trump Media Technology Group, which owns the social media platform Truth Social. If confirmed as FBI director, will you resign from this position and end all ties with the Trump Media and Technology Group?
Yes, Senator, as I've stated to you in writing.
Over the last 2 years, the FBI has dedicated resources to Operation Not Forgotten, which works to address violent crime in Indian country. If confirmed as FBI director, would you continue the important work of Operation Not Forgotten?
I've made that commitment to many of your colleagues who have tribal issues and tribal crimes plaguing their communities, and I'll make that commitment to you as well, Senator.
My time is almost up, but I would like to note that on the many questions asked about the choir, the J6 choir, it included at least 5 men who pled guilty to assaulting police officers. And these are the people whose record this nominee promotes.
12 prosecutors, career prosecutors, were involved in an investigation and prosecuting the cases against President Trump and were recently fired. Some of those that were involved in the Mar-a-Lago classified documents case. Do you know who Brett Reynolds is?
Maybe, but it doesn't ring a bell at this point. Senator.
You're under oath. You have no recollection of who Brett Reynolds is?
If you could provide me with a little more context, I could possibly remember.
Are you aware of any plans or discussions to punish in any way, including termination, FBI agents or personnel associated with Trump investigations?
Senator, just to be clear, I did not participate in any of those DOJ
Sir,
decisions.
that's a yes or no question. Are you aware of any plans or discussions to punish in any way, including termination, FBI agents or personnel associated with Trump investigations? Yes or no?
I'm not aware of that,
Thank you.
Senator.
There is no evidence of wrongdoing by FBI employees involved in these investigations. If you do pursue investigations of those involved, will you commit to using standard processes, including a standard review by the FBI Inspections Division and the Inspector General?
Senator, I will honor all those review processes.
You will honor those review processes.
Yes, Senator.
If these are actions that the FBI employees, if there are actions against FBI employees that do not follow those standards process that happen before you get in, will you commit to reversing any decision prior to your arrival so that those standard processes and the standard review by the FBI Inspections Division will take place?
I don't know what's going on right now over there, but I'm committed to you, Senator, and your colleagues that I will honor the internal review process of the FBI.
Have you made any commitments to anyone about pursuing any investigations or targets if you are FBI director?
Only violent criminals and terrorists.
Have you had any conversations with anyone on the transition team about pursuing any investigations or targets?
Only following the Constitution.
Again, are you certain?
That I have told people on the
Are you
administration.
certain? Have you had any conversations with anyone on the transition team about pursuing any investigations or targets?
Senator, to the best of my recollection, I've only said I will use the Constitution.
Have you discussed specific investigations or targets you would pursue as FBI director with the President of the United States?
Senator, to the best of my recollection, no.
Are you certain?
To the best of my recollection, no.
According to public reports, you were subpoenaed by the federal prosecutors to testify as a witness before the grand jury investigation investigating the Mar-a-Lago classified documents case. And you testified before the grand jury, correct?
Yes, sir.
And when you were before the grand jury, you pled the fifth on the basis of self-incrimination, correct?
I utilized my constitutional rights during that process with the advice and consent of counsel and appeared before that grand jury.
I will take that as a yes. And you are familiar, I imagine, with Section 6002 of Title 18.
Off the top of my head, Senator, not.
Well, Section 6002 is the immunity statute. Whenever a witness refuses to testify or provide other information before a grand jury based upon the privilege against self-incrimination, the court can order the witness to testify. The witness must comply with the order, but they receive immunity, which means that no testimony or any other information provided before the grand jury can be used against them in any criminal proceeding. You were compelled to testify as a witness in the Mar-a-Lago classified document case. Did you participate in any criminal conduct involved in that case?
Involved in which, the Mar-a-Lago classified documents case?
Yes.
No, I testified through compulsion by court order.
You received immunity for providing information that was self-incriminating. Do you remember the name of the prosecutor who questioned you?
There were multiple, Senator. I do not.
Was it one of the people, were any of them people that were fired this past week?
I have no idea, Senator.
Are you certain? You're under oath.
I'm aware that I'm under oath, Senator, and I have no idea, and I did not participate in the removal of any DOJ prosecutors.
What was the information you provided that you received immunity for?
Senator, I would love my grand jury testimony to be released, but as you know, that grand jury testimony has been sealed by the Department of Justice, and I'm not allowed to discuss it here.
Well, I find it troubling that you do not know the law here, and let me tell you what the law is. Rule 6 governs grand jury proceedings. Under Rule 6E, grand jurors, court reporters, and prosecutors are bound to secrecy. But witnesses are not bound by secrecy. You were a witness in the classified documents case. You are not bound by secrecy. You can tell us everything that happened in that room and everything you testified about. I'll ask you again, what information did you provide to the grand jury?
In this, we are in agreement, Senator. Get my grand jury testimony. I want it made public. I asked the Department of Justice to make it public, and they refused to do so.
There is no legal bound against you telling us right now what you testified to.
When I asked for my transcript to be released, the
Sir,
Department
did you
of
or did you
Justice-
not commit a crime?
Senator, I did not commit a crime.
Then why won't you tell us what you testified to?
Because it occurred over the course of 3 weeks. I don't have the ability to recall everything I testified to, but I'm asking you to
Did
put
you
my
testify
transcript
to
out.
witnessing the President of the United States declassifying documents.
Senator, what I testified to is best captured by that transcript
So
in real time.
you're not willing to tell Congress, after making many pledges today about transparency, whether or not you testified to witnessing the President of the United States declassify documents. In the name of all the values you have said today, did you or did you not testify to witnessing the President of the United States declassify documents?
I testified accordingly and under oath, and I encourage you to get that transcript.
And by the law of our land, you are free to tell people, what are you hiding from Congress? Answer the question. Did you testify to witnessing the President of the United States declassifying documents, yes or no?
Senator, the grand jury testimony is available to you. I encourage you to make it public.
As you likely know, the second volume of Jack Smith's report about the classified document case is not public yet. To fulfill our constitutional duty of advice and consent, the President, on nominations, members of this committee have asked the DOJ to review the report. Do you agree that Congress should thoroughly review its nominees? Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay. Now, last question and I'll be done. When you and I met, you told me that you wanted to remove 11,000 FBI personnel or move many of them, and you said that again today. You have looked at an org chart to understand what offices and functions that you'll be pulling from. I don't think you've done a serious analysis, but I do think you have an assignment from Donald Trump to gut the FBI. You said yourself, I'll shut down the FBI Hoover building. There are people specifically that you are targeting, I believe. And do you agree that you have already prepared plans to remove certain individuals from their offices? For example, individuals that will be replaced by political personnel. The political personnel that are being put in an institution that you and I discussed that has no political appointees but one, the political personnel involve these names: Erica Knight, Tom Ferguson, Greg Bitzner.
You stated your question. Would you answer? Or don't you want to? Okay?
We can move on.
The FBI has paused its new academy classes while they assess how the firing freeze impacts them. President Trump's executive orders has a national security exception, but it is unclear how it will apply to agencies like the FBI. The FBI has a large civilian employee population, so it's not certain if they will qualify for exceptions. The White House memo stated that nearly 1,000 probationary FBI employees would stay on only if, quote, justified, without clarity on a timetable or process for justification. Mr. Patel, how does this help or does this hurt the FBI improving public safety in America?
Senator, I know about as much as this late-breaking news as you do by reading it in the media, and I will say the following in terms of FBI employees, if I'm confirmed. FBI employees represent the front line of defense for national security and crime, and if I'm confirmed, I will ensure that all FBI graduates of the academy will be protected and funded so that we can continue the fight together.
But would you agree that even just causing a pause or confusion in being able to grow the ranks is not helpful to public safety in America?
Not having a law enforcement there.
Thank you. 7 minutes goes by fast, so I want to get to as many topics as I can. As you know, the FBI plays a critical role in national security and public safety, yet the reports are that the hiring freezes is damaging. I want to submit for the record, Mr. Chairman, a New York Times article outlining the questions and concerns I just stated. Now, on to the next topic. FBI agents rely on their leadership to ensure their safety and success of operations. As Senior Director for Counterterrorism at the National Security Council, you were involved in a SEAL team rescue mission to recover a 27-year-old American hostage in Nigeria. According to former Secretary of Defense Mark Esper, you falsely informed senior leadership that the United States had secured permission to fly over other nations' airspace en route to Nigeria. This misinformation forced the aircraft to circle the border for an additional hour potentially jeopardizing the mission's success and putting service members at undue risk. Can you explain your decision to falsely claim airspace permissions had been secured for the mission?
I greatly appreciate this. This is one that hits home squarely because my guys, my friends, were on that operation. They were in that helo. They were in that V-22. And there's never a time in my career that it would jeopardize the safety of the men and women in uniform. And if you ask the National Security Advisor of the President of the United States, who's with me on that day, who has gone on the record publicly, as has General Tony Tata, who's the Undersecretary of Defense, they have both stated with affirmation that I acted appropriately, relayed all information accurately, and never jeopardized the safety of the hostages. And our men were on the ground for 59 seconds and executed 6 sentries and rescued an American hostage named Philip Walton, and he's home today with his family because of it.
So your friend's word versus the former Secretary of Defense. That's what we're going to be asked to consider. Next topic. In September of 2024, just a couple of months ago, you stated that Chris Wray was caught illegally using 702 collection against Americans 274,000 times. That's a quote. And you criticized Congress for failing to implement necessary reforms when reauthorizing Section 702. Now, earlier in this hearing, I heard you respond to Senator Cornyn's questions and saying that the improvements to FISA 702 accountability go a long way. That's what you said today, earlier, on the record and under oath. But on that September podcast that I'm referring to, you said that by passing the reauthorization bill, Republicans, quote, bent the knee. So which is it? They bent the knee and didn't reform 702 as you would suggest, or that they've gone a long way?
Senator, as I've talked about extensively with my experience with 702, it is a necessary tool to protect this country. The FISA court themselves issued the report you're referring to about the illegal searches. They found 270-some thousand violations. So I think we need it, and I think we need to work with Congress to reform it.
Let me rephrase my question more bluntly. Which is your opinion on the most recent reauthorization of 702? That Republicans bent the knee for not insisting or adopting significant reforms, or that reforms have gone a long way? Because they seem like contradictory statements.
702 is a critical tool, and I'm proud of the reforms that have been implemented, and I'm proud to work with Congress moving forward to implement more reforms.
So they bent the knee, but now you're proud of it. Got it. Next topic. I know you've been asked about the J6 prison choir prior in this hearing. My question is not going to rehash previous questions. Funds have been raised, as you explained to me in our meeting last week, to support families of insurrectionists, my words clearly not yours, that have been in jail, including those who committed acts of violence against police officers. I want to know, in any of your work around the J6 prison choir, was any of the funds that were raised used to support the families of the police officers who were brutally attacked by the insurrectionists?
Senator, my foundation has used funds
Yes
to
or
help
no?
police
It's a yes or
officers
no.
across the country.
It's a yes or no.
I don't know if those officers' families applied for a grant. That's how we distribute at a charity, based on who comes
that
in.
tells me a lot about your care and prioritization of the police officers you claim to support, because
They've given away over $500,000 to law enforcement and active
but you
duty
can't
militaries.
articulate. I mean, you were able to articulate to me examples of the families of January 6th insurrectionists. Because the insurrectionists in
words, not
jail, you
mine.
supported the families, but you can't, say clearly and confidently that families of police officers who were brutally attacked got similar support.
We had a catastrophe for our democracy on January 6th. And you're asserting that you won, and you did, and I acknowledge it. It troubles me that so many people have difficulty saying Biden won the election. And I listened to your response, Mr. Patel, and many of the people who congratulated you and your parents on your extraordinary story. I share that, so I want you to know that. But what's so hard about just saying that Biden won the 2020 election? What's hard about that?
Senator, as I've said before, that President Biden was certified and sworn in, and he was the president. I don't know how else to say it.
Well, the other way to say it is he won.
He was the president.
The other way to say it is he won. I can say Trump won. I didn't vote for him, but he won. You know, Al Gore said Bush won when they were having that recount in Florida. And we have had a peaceful transfer of power here in very contested elections. And I'll just be very direct with you about why I think this is of consequence. When Donald Trump has never acknowledged that he lost in 2020. And he invited people to come to the Capitol on January 6th to stop the steal. And after that happened, police officers died. People were injured. It created enormous ongoing bitterness within the country. And that's your boss. Do you believe that the 2020 election was stolen, as President Trump says it is?
Sir, my opinions on the 2020 election have been expressed in this hearing, and he's entitled to whatever opinions he wants.
Do you agree with him that the election was stolen in 2020?
Senator, millions of Americans have expressed concern going back to multiple elections over election integrity.
You know, you're so skillful. You understand what I'm asking you. Can you say the words, Joe Biden won the 2020 election?
Joe Biden was the president of the United States.
Yeah, I'm going to stay on this. There's a difference. I can say the words, Donald Trump won. I don't like to say it, but I must say it. And you cannot say that Joe Biden won the election.
What I can say is the same for both of them, Senator. Both of their elections were certified, and they are both, one was and one now is president.
Okay. The reason I have some concerns about that, my colleagues on the Republican side, is that whoever is the FBI director, and I suspect it will be Mr. Patel, has a boss. And he has strong points of view. He said Vice President Harris was a criminal and should be prosecuted. Is that a prosecution you would initiate?
There is no prosecution or that the FBI will ever initiate, because the FBI will only do investigations, and those will only be open where there's a factual and constitutional basis to do so.
Your boss has said that General Milley, who served us with great distinction, I happen to have great admiration for, should be tried for treason. Do you agree with that?
Senator, everybody's entitled to their opinion. The only thing that matters at the FBI is whether the law is followed.
Okay, I know everybody's entitled to their opinion. I'm asking you your opinion. Should General Milley be tried for treason?
Vice President Harris, Kamala Harris, or General Milley or anyone otherwise will not be subjected to an FBI investigation. That doesn't mean the rigorous standards of the Constitution.
You've talked about your devotion to the men and women in the FBI. I accept that. But as you know, President Trump used the power of the pardon to let people who are cop beaters out of jail, right? He also let a drug dealer out of jail. You're familiar with Ross, or maybe you're not. Ross Ulbricht started the Silk Road, the dark web. He made millions of dollars selling drugs, providing a vehicle by which people could get things that were going to kill him, and people died. He also sought a couple of people to murder on his behalf because he thought his empire was threatened. What is your opinion about Trump pardoning this drug dealer, attempted murderer?
My opinion on presidential pardons is that, one, I was not consulted, and
No.
problems with the FBI.
I'm asking you your opinion about Mr.
Right.
Ulbricht. Should the person who created that dark web drug dealer situation, should he be pardoned in your opinion?
Senator, it's not appropriate for me to speak on pardons, but I've spoken out against pardons against cop killers and those who do violence to law enforcement, whether it's President Biden or Trump.
I'm with you on that, okay? I'm with the chairman over here. But I'm just trying to find out on Ulbricht. You're going to, again, bottom line here, you're going to have a tough job, and you're going to have a tough boss, because he gets it in his mind he wants to do something, nothing gets in the way. And there's going to become a time when an FBI director or
an attorney general has to make a decision about the Constitution and what's being requested, and can that person, at that time, when the important values of the Constitution are at stake, say no to a person who is insisting you take an action?
And Senator, that's why I think it's time, for the first time in this country's history, that a public defender be the next director of the FBI, because no one knows more about constitutional due process than PDs.
Well, you know you're appealing to mutual pride here with the public defender, but you know what? I still understand you didn't answer the question. That's the public defender in me, okay? Look, and I say this to my colleagues, we cannot have a weaponized Justice Department or FBI. And what's weaponized is in the eye of the beholder, like the prosecutions of President Trump, and I get that. We cannot have it. But what I think we all have to acknowledge when we've got a president who's basically saying a political enemy, whether it's Harris, whether it's Liz Cheney, whether it's Adam Schiff, should be prosecuted, that's doing damage to the mutual goal we have of not weaponizing a department.
Mr. Patel, early in this hearing, Senator Durbin asked you about the January 6th choir of inmates whose song you promoted, and here's what you said. I did not have anything to do with the recording. I did not have anything to do with the recording. Do you stand by that testimony, Mr. Patel?
Senator, what I said was I didn't do the recording.
You said you didn't have anything to do with the recording, which is interesting because here's what you told Steve Bannon on his podcast. So what we thought would be cool is if we captured that audio and then, of course, had the greatest president, President Donald J. Trump, recite the Pledge of Allegiance, then we went to a studio and recorded it, mastered it, digitized it, and put it out as a song now releasing exclusively on the War Room. We. If you had nothing to do with it, Mr. Patel, why did you tell Steve Bannon and all his listeners that you did?
That's why it says we, as you highlighted.
Yeah, and you're part of the we, right? When you say we, that includes you, doesn't it, Mr. Patel?
Not in every instance.
Well, that's new. So when you said we, you didn't really mean you. Is that your testimony?
Not unless you have a new definition for the word we.
Oh, okay. I always thought we included the person who pronounced the word, but maybe not. Well, you also said this, Mr. Patel. We were able to capture the recording thanks to their courageous singing, and we were able to take it to a studio. So let me ask you, Mr. Patel, after saying we took it to a studio, did you take it to a studio?
Me personally, no.
After you said that we digitized and recorded it and all that, did you take it to a studio and digitize and record it?
Me personally, no.
Okay, so you were lying to Steve Bannon and his audience. Is that what you're saying?
No, I was using the proverbial we appropriately, as you've
the
identified.
royal we. Oh, I see. And so you certainly promoted the hell out of it, though, didn't you?
I don't know what that means, but I promoted the heck out of raising money for families in need.
With promotions on social media and saying you were going to get this to #1 on the billboards, right, Mr. Patel?
I think it did.
Yes, it did. Yes, it did. Isn't that great? People who violently attack police have a #1 song thanks to you, Mr. Patel. That's something to be really proud of. Now, you've claimed, Mr. Patel, you didn't know about any of these people in the choir. Is that right?
I did not know about the violent offenders, and I did not participate in any of the violence in and around January 6th.
Tell me, Mr. Patel, what due diligence did you do to find out who was in the choir before you promoted their beautiful music? These people who assaulted law enforcement, what due diligence did you do?
Senator, I didn't record it myself.
So you did no due diligence before you promoted this song by these violent felons. Is that what you're telling us?
Senator, I did not record that myself.
So you're being considered for director of the FBI. And here you did no diligence to find out whether people you were associating with now the President of the United States in song were convicted of attacking police officers. Is that who we want running the FBI? I want you to turn around. There are Capitol Police officers behind you. They're guarding us. Take a look at them right now. Turn around.
I'm looking at you. You're talking to me.
No, look at them. I want you to look at them if you can, if you have the courage to look them in the eye, Mr. Patel, and tell them you're proud of what you did. Tell them you're proud that you raised money off of people that assaulted their colleagues, that pepper sprayed them, that beat them with poles. Tell them you're proud of what you did, Mr. Patel. They're right there. They're guarding you today. Tell them how proud you are.
That's an abject lie, and you know it.
How
I've
proud you are.
never, ever accepted violence against law enforcement. I've worked with these
Oh,
men
no,
and
no,
women,
didn't
as you
accept
know,
it. You
my entire
glorified
life.
it in song,
and I did
Mr.
not make
Patel.
a single dime out of
It in
it.
song. Well, let me.
How about you ask them if I have their backs, and let's see about that
Let me ask you
answer.
this, Mr. Patel. Let me ask you this. If an FBI director promoted a song of people who sprayed pepper spray in the face of an FBI agent, would you say they were fit to be director?
Mr. Schiff,
Yes or no? Would they be fit to be director?
I am fit to be the director of the FBI.
If you were the FBI director and you promoted a song with someone who beat an FBI agent with a pole, would you say you were fit to be FBI director?
Mr. Schiff, I am fit to be FBI director based on my 16
And
years
yet
in
you
government
did all
service.
these things, Mr. Patel. You can say, oh, I support law enforcement, I decry violence against law enforcement. You can say all that. It's what you did, Mr. Patel, that matters. It's what you did that matters. Well, let me ask you about something else that you did, Mr. Patel. Did you claim that Donald Trump declassified all the documents at Mar-a-Lago? Did you claim that?
In what proceeding?
To the public, ever, did you tell anyone that Donald Trump declassified all the documents at Mar-a-Lago?
From publicly available information, President Trump issued a declassification order on a variety of
No,
materials.
I'm just asking you, did you tell the public, did you tell anyone, did you make the claim that Donald Trump had declassified those hundreds of classified documents that were at Mar-a-Lago? Did you make that claim
From my
publicly?
best of my recollection, I said President Trump issued a declassification order to a large number of documents.
Yeah, and were you present when he declassified all the Mar-a-Lago documents?
Senator, I'm not saying he declassified all the Mar-a-Lago documents. I said President
so now-
Trump declassified a large number of documents, and I would hope this committee and the rest of Congress would want to get those documents to the American people.
Mr. Patel, before a president or anyone declassified documents, wouldn't you want to know whether making the public would cause sources to be killed? Wouldn't you want to know that before you just declare they're all declassified? Wouldn't that be the responsible thing for a president to do?
It was the responsible thing for us to do. That's why we declassified the Nunes memo.
And did Donald Trump declassify?
And no one died.
And did Donald Trump ever ask any of the agencies who produced those documents whether declassifying them would put people's lives at risk? Did he ever do that to your knowledge, Kash Patel?
I don't know that he didn't. Do you?
No, that's the problem, isn't it? That's the problem, isn't it? So let me just ask, Mr. Chairman, if you would, Mr. Patel has said he has no problem. He would support the release of his grand jury testimony in that case. I would ask you, Mr. Chairman and Ranking Member, to join me in requesting, with Mr. Patel's approval, the release of those grand jury transcripts. And I would also ask Mr. Patel whether you support the release of Volume 2 as it pertains to you of the special counsel's report. Any reference to you in the report, to your truthfulness, will you support the release to this committee of those sections of Volume 2 of special counsel's report?
I support following the law and providing whatever information the law requires.
Well, you said to the Wall Street Journal that you support transparency. Here's your chance, Mr. Patel. You support release of that to this committee, yes or no?
Your time's up.
Mr. Patel, I have 3 or 4 things, and I'll try to get through them quickly. First is this. When it comes to the issue of violence in politics, I personally believe it has no place in politics. Whether it's violence against Donald Trump at the Butler County Fairgrounds or violence against Nancy Pelosi's husband in her home, period. And those people who, Proud Boys, whatever the heck they call themselves, have no place in this country as far as I'm concerned if they espouse violence in any form. Do you agree?
Yes, Senator.
Let the record show we actually agreed on something. Number 2, the reason why we keep asking, which may sound a little silly to the audience here, why are we so concerned about this choir singing a song? What's that got to do with anything? The question is, who are you going to care about? Who are you going to help? Are you going to help those victims of January 6th, the policemen and their families? Or are you going to help people who were arrested for assaulting them? I think the J6 choir looks like a tribute to them, characterizing them as political prisoners and unlucky, and just patriotic people who may have gotten out of hand. Do you see the difference?
Excuse me, Senator, I can appreciate the difference, but I think my track record shows which side I fall on.
Well, that's why we keep asking you, what do you do with the money that you get from this music, and who do you give it to? And you've really kind of ducked and dodged and said, I'm not aware of this. I had nothing to do with it.
No, we actually give all the money. Nobody made any money. All proceeds went through a 501c3.
I'm talking about the creation of the musical work.
Yes, all the money, all
No,
the profits went to nonviolent offenders' families and other groups in need.
The point I'm getting to is not what happens to the proceeds, but who created this musical masterpiece? Who was in on this creation, and why, who they chose to be the members of the choir? And you profess to know nothing about that. Is that true?
I did not have any participation in the recording.
Well, it's going to be difficult to understand how you can disperse the money and have nothing to do with the recording. Let me ask you about one of the conspiracy theories, one of the major ones that I've heard you associated with, and that is whether or not the FBI planned January 6th. Why did you say that?
Senator, I appreciate the opportunity to address that. That's not what I said. The entirety of the statement attributes my conclusion based on the public record that the FBI utilized sources in and around January 6th, and the Biden Inspector General confirmed just that.
So it's Cash's Corner, and the date is December I can't read the writing, it's so small here. It looks like it's December 2002. And what did the FBI know before January 6th? And you said, what was the FBI doing planning January 6th for a year? Want to send this down to the desk so he gets a chance to look at it? Why did you say that? Did you think the FBI was really planning January 6th for a year?
Actually, Senator, I'm grateful that you raised this point. You should watch the entirety of the episode. This is the problem with taking snippets. Well, let me inform you then. What it says is it raises an interrogatory asking why government resources were utilized. I've run resources and sources at the FBI. I've run sources overseas. It takes months for source developmental
What
networks.
resources were utilized a year in advance of planning?
That's the question I'm asking, and the Biden Inspector General report answered that question in the affirmative, that multiple sources were utilized, and I was simply trying to get to that answer.
What the Inspector General came back with was, quote, there is no evidence that the FBI had undercover employees in the various protest crowds or at the Capitol on January 6th.
And there is
no evidence.
There's a huge distinction between undercover employees and sources. I know because I ran them. And anybody in law enforcement knows that
So
too.
you think the FBI was planning January 6th for months ahead of time?
Once again, that's not what I said.
Yes, well, read your own words. Maybe that's a good starting point.
Mr. Patel, you supposedly know something about grand juries. I just went to the DOJ website to get language. I'm quoting it. Federal Rule of Criminal Procedure 6E prohibits most persons present during the proceedings from disclosing what transpired inside the grand jury room. However, the proscription does not apply to witnesses. Do you now, as a grand jury witness, authorize this committee access to a transcript of your own testimony?
Senator, I authorize this committee to get whatever is appropriate and lawful, as I've said before.
Specifically including the transcript of your grand jury testimony, which you have the authority to authorize us to obtain.
Well, I don't know if I singularly have that authority. I don't think that's how grand jury testimony works. The
You
Department
do.
of Justice.
You do, because you are the witness who can do that.
There's also a court order on that case, sir.
Separately, you can get grand jury testimony by court order. The witnesses can always reveal their grand jury testimony. Do you authorize us to get access to your testimony?
I authorize this committee to lawfully obtain any records that they are appropriately allowed to get.
And we are only, you're speaking in circles now, because we're only lawfully authorized to get that with your permission as the witness. Do you give us that permission?
Senator, I'm not an expert on this constitutional standard, and so I can't commit to something
It's not
that I don't
expert,
know.
it's like super simple. Grand jury Rule 6E doesn't apply to witnesses. This is not hard. You are a witness. That is a simple fact.
I'm just
You can
relying on my
authorize us
time
to see it.
as a prosecutor, where grand jury witnesses were not allowed to share what they were testifying to. And when I was commissioned
Grand
before
jury
the judge,
witnesses are allowed to speak about what they were told
Wow.
in the about what they said in the grand jury unless they're under a specific court order. Are you under a specific court order not to reveal your testimony in the grand jury?
Senator, I can't
Sit
go
here right
into,
now.
I can't go into court orders granted by the DC District Chief Judge.
If they apply to you, of course you can.
You want me to violate a court order?
You're saying that there's a secret court order in which you can't tell whether you're subject to a court order or not?
I'm telling you that if you find the applicable court order and it permits this request.
I don't need a court order if you give authorization.
I'm not the one that has the authority to do that.
Yes, you are, as a witness. You're just wrong on that. Second, the FBI has records related to the criminal investigations of Donald Trump. Will you protect those records in a manner consistent with ordinary FBI document preservation practices as head of the FBI?
All records will.
No destruction of documents to please Trump?
No, I think he put forth a memo saying all records must be preserved.
Good.
Mr. Patel, our agencies, in particular the FBI and DOJ, critically rely on inspectors general and general counsels for advice. As Chair Grassley and many of us have long recognized, federal agencies rely on the independent oversight of inspectors general, and agencies depend on the legal advice of offices of general counsel. And as you've testified today, it's your intention to lead the FBI within the boundaries of law and the Constitution. Last week, President Trump fired more than a dozen inspectors general and provided no notice to Congress. We passed a law in 2022 requiring the president to provide Congress with a substantive rationale, including detailed and case-specific reasons, 30 days before the removal of any IG. How many days has President Trump been in office?
Sorry, Senator, approximately 10.
10. Is it possible to give 30 days notice in 10 days?
I'm not great at math, but it doesn't sound like it.
It doesn't. You're an attorney. Did Trump facially violate this law in terms of the timing of the firing of the inspectors general?
Senator, I'm not going to entertain a hypothetical on legal violations, but I will look into all possible legal violations referred.
I'll simply say that for those of us concerned about the quality and the duration of service of inspectors general, this was troubling. And frankly, I think it is a facial violation of a law passed by Congress. In September 2023, on the Great America Show, a podcast, you said, and I believe I'm quoting accurately, all these general counsel's offices throughout every agency and department need to be slashed in half because these lawyers just come in there and they come in there to slow down and paralyze the movement of the America First agenda. Mr. Patel, does that comment suggest that if confirmed, it would be your intention to fire the career civil servants, the lawyers in the FBI's general counsel office?
No.
Could you give us any reassurance that it would be your intention to listen to the advice and counsel of the Inspector General of the department and the General Counsel of the agency?
With addressing those in order, Senator, with IGs, as you know, I believe, and I've shown throughout this proceeding that IGs have provided invaluable service in Republican and Democratic administrations. And I think they're critical, and we must have competent IGs going forward. Similarly, with general counsel's offices who are stocked with career employees, those employees must continue their work so long as no employee politicizes the work and mission of the FBI.
Thank you. My core concern about these firings of the IGs, about the independence of the agency, have not been fully satisfied. I appreciate your answers here today, but I remain concerned by your previous statements and your answers here today.
I'm going to ask you some easy questions.
Okay.
I take it from what you have said to a couple of my colleagues that while we may disagree on the meaning of Rule 6E as to getting the transcript, you would not object to this committee seeking access to that transcript.
No.
And you're aware that Rule 6E permits you to talk about your own testimony. Will you testify to this committee, let's say in a classified setting, as to what you said to the grand jury?
Senator, I'm here to testify to this committee about everything I'm allowed to, and
You're allowed, under Rule 6E, to tell us what you said to the grand jury. This is kind of the first day that an assistant U.S. attorney goes to the first grand jury and is asked by a witness, can I talk about what I told you? And the answer is yes, you know.
Senator, I will consult with counsel and provide the appropriate answer.
Let me just say right to the point, Mr. Patel. What are you hiding? Why won't you tell us? You testified under a grant of immunity after taking the Fifth Amendment, as you're privileged to do, and the appearance here is that you have something to hide. I submit to my colleagues on the committee, we need to know what the grand jury testimony is. We need access to that second volume. And you have no objection to our seeking it, but you won't tell us, even in a classified confidential setting. I think that position is disqualifying.
That was days of testimony years ago. I don't have the ability to recollect
Well, you can
that.
refresh your recollection with access to the
transcript.
Let me ask you another topic. And I really regret that you won't cooperate with us on the grand jury testimony. Would you object to the firing of the Department of Justice Inspector General Michael Horowitz?
Would I object to it? That's the providence for the Attorney General to make. It's not something I would participate in.
But you know of his work. It's been bipartisan, very thorough, competent, objective, impartial. He has been critical in Republican and Democratic administration. Won't you object to his firing?
I think he's done a great job, but it's not up to me to decide who stays and goes at the Department of Justice.
But I'm not asking you to make the decision. I'm asking you whether you will take a stand, speak up, stand up in favor of a watchdog who has helped preserve the integrity of the Department of Justice and aligned himself against waste and fraud and abuse.
If the Attorney General asked me, yes, for my opinion.
Volunteered.
As we talked about, Mr. Patel, truth incredibly important in an FBI director. And a number of the things I asked you about in the first round you didn't recall or you wanted more context. I'm going to give you one of those. I'll give you the rest on the record. That was about when I asked you about the Capitol Police officers who testified in the January 6 hearings and you accused them of lying. You said, and I quote, "I don't think that's accurate." I actually have the transcript here, which was reported by the Washington Post. And that was in March of 2024 on Joe Pack's podcast. He asked you, the Capitol Police in that fake January 6 committee, they didn't tell the truth, did they? Patel, no, not just them, many others. And lying under oath is a federal offense and they should be investigated for it. Do you believe that about the police officers?
That's a general statement and a mischaracterization of what I said. I encourage you to read the rest of the interview. This is why snippets of information are often misleading and detrimental to this committee's advice and consent
Well,
process.
if you consent, I would love to have 5 hours of questions and then I could read the whole transcript.
You've got 2 minutes.
Wow. In September, you referred to the FBI's intel branch, which was stood up after 9/11 and works to protect us from foreign adversaries like China, as, quote, the biggest problem the FBI has had, unquote. And you said you wanted to, quote, break that component out of the FBI. It was the same sentence where you said about turning the FBI headquarters into a museum. Do you really think that closing the intel branch will make Americans safer?
Again, it's not what I said. The intelligence component of the FBI has seen some politicization and weaponization that we've discussed here today, and intelligence collection capabilities belong in the intelligence community. Having served in both law enforcement and intelligence communities, I'm uniquely qualified to bring the intelligence limited component back to the FBI that ties back to the legislative mandate of prosecuting and investigating criminals.
Okay, last, I will end early, Mr. Chairman. You said in May of 2023, this is important to all of us because Elon Musk is playing such a major role in the government right now. You said Elon Musk cares about two things, your data and his money. Do you still stand by those words?
I don't have that entire quote, but that's what it says.
It was in you were angry because of endorsement of Governor DeSantis in Florida, and so you were defending Donald Trump, and so you criticized Elon Musk, and that was the context for it. And you said Elon Musk cares about two things, your data and his money, and it matters to us because he's playing such a major role in the government. And so I just wonder if you think that's true.
I don't have that full quote in front of me to respond.
Mr. Chairman, I want to touch on something that's been on my mind lately, and I will tie it back to this hearing. We have seen a wholesale attack and assault in the past 2 weeks by President Trump on the value of diversity. Through his executive orders, he is seeking to dismantle over 60 years of work to promote equal opportunity in the federal government. His pronouncements have gotten so bad that apparently the Defense Intelligence Agency issued a memo 2 days ago that it would no longer commemorate Martin Luther King Day, Women's History Month, Holocaust Day of Remembrance, or Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month, and so on. Why is there such a fear of people who are different? In Hawaii, we celebrate diversity and know that it gives us strength. It is part of what makes Hawaii and America great. Mr. Patel, earlier you shared some deplorable racist rhetoric that had been used against you. As someone who has also been the recipient of this sort of hateful language, I am deeply sympathetic. I also note, Mr. Patel, that in the past, you have recognized the value of diversity. Back when you were in law school, you signed on to an amicus brief in the Grither case, supporting consideration of race in law school admissions. I hope that joining the Trump administration will not cause you to change your views on the value of diversity. Reflecting on this hearing, it is sad that we are considering Mr. Patel's nomination despite his gross inadequacy to do the job of FBI director fairly and objectively. Yet there is no question that much pressure has been brought to bear on my Republican colleagues to support this nomination. For example, a man named Mike Davis has been threatening my Republican colleagues. He said that this vote was a red line, that if Senate Republicans don't vote to confirm Mr. Patel, his organization, a group called the Article 3 Project, would make their lives a living hell. I certainly hope that all of us will base our vote on your nomination on the best interest, who can work in the best interest of our country, and not based on this sort of pressure.
Mr. Patel, do you know any of these 5 individuals? Erica Knight, Tom Ferguson, Greg Menser, Steve Reese, or Carlos Fernandez?
Yes, Senator.
Who are they?
People I've worked with in the past at some point.
I'm told that those are the people that will be additional political appointees to help run the FBI. Is that correct?
That's news to me, Senator.
Under the history of the Federal Bureau of Investigation since the reforms in the early 1970s, there's only been one political appointee. I'm told that these will be additional political appointees, 5 extra political appointees. Do you know if Reese or Fernandez are affiliated with SpaceX or Elon Musk?
I don't.
I'm told that they are affiliated with SpaceX and Elon Musk, and that he had influence in who will be placed around you as political appointees. Mr. Patel, did you see the President of the United States declassify the documents that were found at Mar-a-Lago?
I witnessed the President of the United States issue a declassification order for documents.
That did not answer my question. Did you or did you not see the President of the United States declassify the documents that he was holding, the classified documents that were at Mar-a-Lago? And did you?
I don't know the answer to that question because I don't know what was fully found because the Justice Department hasn't made that public.
You claim publicly that you saw President Trump declassify documents. Is that correct?
That's correct, Senator.
So you did indeed see President Trump declassify the documents that were found at Mar-a-Lago that he refused to turn over. Is that correct?
No, what I said, Senator, was I heard and witnessed the President issue a declassification order for a number of documents.
For the documents specifically that were at Mar-a-Lago?
When he issued that order, there was documents. I don't know what was found and what was not found at Mar-a-Lago. I wasn't there.
So this is the issue. The question is will you lie for the President of the United States? Would you lie for Donald Trump?
No.
I hear you saying no, but the best way to clarify that would be to testify, as you are allowed by law, upon what you said to the grand jury. Because that grand jury, as you just said to my colleague, 2 or 3 days of it was about this specific issue. And so as my time ends, Mr. Chairman, it would be utterly irresponsible for this committee to move forward with his nomination unless we know factually, which can be proven by looking at the documents that he's refusing to testify towards. It would be irresponsible for us to move forward if we do not know that the future head of the FBI would break the law and lie for the President of the United States. We can find that out factually if we had access to the testimony or if he would tell us what he said to the grand jury, which by the law of the United States of America, he's allowed to, but he's refusing to do so. He is refusing the transparency that he claims to adhere to. He is refusing to be direct with the United States Senate. He is refusing to be transparent and put it all out there. Did he or did he not lie for the president? That is the question.
Mr. Patel, do you believe that background checks for firearm purchases are constitutional?
I don't know the in-depths of it, but I think that's what the Supreme Court has said, Senator.
So the word would be YES, yes. Can you say yes, are background checks constitutional?
I can say whatever the Constitution and the Supreme Court ruled is the rule of the land.
And what is the law of the land at the moment?
I'm not an expert on state-by-state background checks.
You're going to be universal background checks. Well,
that's different.
I think actually your answer is pretty telling. Let me ask you another question. Do you believe that civilian ownership of machine guns are protected by the Second Amendment?
Universal background checks are different. That's not what
I
we
asked you a
say.
separate question. Do you believe civilian ownership of machine guns is protected by the Second Amendment?
Whatever the courts rule in regards to the Second Amendment is what is protected by the Second Amendment.
Yet another telling response, colleagues, on another important issue. We've all talked, both sides of the aisle, about our concern about gun violence in America. I raise these questions because of an association I can observe between Mr. Patel and gun owners of America, a group staunchly opposed to firearm regulation, a group that Mr. Patel addressed in August, and a group that in December issued a press release applauding his nomination to be FBI director. Gun Owners of America has taken extreme positions, including the position that all background checks are unconstitutional and that civilian ownership of machine guns is protected under the Second Amendment. Mr. Patel, let me remind you that as FBI director, you would oversee critical responsibilities related to firearm regulation, including administering the National Instant Criminal Background Check System. Yes, it's constitutional. It's in place for a reason. You would also regulate the distribution of machine guns to prevent them from falling into the wrong hands. Policies and programs in place for a reason. And given your hesitancy, given your answers, I'm concerned about your ability to do the job when it's not in alignment with groups like Gun Owners of America. Colleagues, we've been hearing a lot of partial responses and lack of recollections throughout the day, and I can't help but identify the pattern of Mr. Patel calling FBI leadership corrupt, labeling agents as gangsters, accusing them of being part of a criminal deep state conspiracy. We've heard of his experience with the J6 prison choir, a group of individuals convicted for their roles in the January 6th insurrection. We've heard his false claims that the U.S. had secured airspace permissions during a high-stakes SEAL team hostage rescue mission in Nigeria. I can go on and on. These positions are inconsistent with the role of FBI director, a position that demands independence, professionalism, and unwavering commitment to the rule of law. Mr. Patel, your loyalty to President Trump and the MAGA movement may score you points in some quarters, but they are certainly not the qualities necessary to serve as director of the FBI. And Mr. Chair, just in closing, I understand while I was out of the room earlier that Senator Tillis raised my name and attributed to a quote, bent the knee, as part of my questioning earlier to me. And so for the record and for my colleague from North Carolina, I want to clarify that the bent the knee quote were not my words. I was quoting Mr. Patel as he appeared on the Sean Ryan show on September 2nd of 2024. And I'm happy to share a link, Senator Tillis, to clarify.
Mr. Patel, when Mr. Booker was asking you questions in his first round, you said, Senator, the grand jury testimony is available to you. I encourage you to make it public. You also later said, or previously to Mr. Booker said, get my grand jury testimony. I asked the Department of Justice to make it public. I asked the Department of Justice to make it public. Do you stand by that testimony?
If that's what I said.
So you asked the Justice Department to make your grand jury testimony public?
At the time of my appearance in the grand jury.
Yeah. And who did you ask to do that?
The lawyers.
Mr. Chairman, since the witness has said that he encourages this testimony to be public, that he in fact asked the Justice Department to make it public, I would ask you, Mr. Chairman, if you and the ranking member would be willing to write to the court acknowledging the witness has asked for this to be public, supporting it being made public. I can't imagine there's a court in the land that would say no to a bipartisan request like that.
I won't take, let me say something. I'm not going to take this out of your time. It's not directly answering your question, but I think it'd be significant what Richard Grinnell put on X. I testified in front of Jack Smith's grand jury, at Justice Department, and Jack Smith's prosecutor told me directly that I could not talk about my testimony or risk legal actions. Then he goes on to say that certain senators, I won't mention here, should, as those lawyers, ask those lawyers why they instructed witnesses this way.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We'd welcome the chance to have Mr. Grinnell testify under oath as opposed to on X. But nevertheless, what I would ask, given that this witness has said he made the request, this witness has said he would like us to read the testimony, I would ask if you and Mr. Durbin would be, Senator Durbin would be willing to make that request of the court.
I wouldn't answer your question without get all the background I need, considering the conversation between you two. I couldn't make that judgment now.
Yeah, I appreciate your consideration, Mr. Chairman. And the reason why I think it's so important is let's remind ourselves what those documents were in Mar-a-Lago. According to the indictment, the classified documents Trump stored in his boxes included information regarding defense and weapons capabilities of both the United States and foreign countries, United States nuclear programs, potential vulnerabilities of the United States and its allies to military attack, and plans for possible retaliation in response to a foreign attack. So testimony that goes to the care or lack of care, the truthfulness or lack of truthfulness of Mr. Patel would be directly relevant to whether he should be confirmed as FBI director, and those records are there for the asking. No court's going to turn us down. Mr. Patel may be, I don't know, but he may be the first nominee for FBI director in history who felt it necessary to plead the fifth, to say that he wouldn't testify to a grand jury because it might incriminate him. Maybe the first nominee for FBI director ever to feel the necessity of pleading the fifth. Shouldn't we ask for that testimony when the witness himself says he would encourage it? Finally, I would just say, we need to think about where we are in this moment. We have a new president. He's fired prosecutors who investigated him. He's investigating other prosecutors, or his Department of Justice is. He's fired inspector generals who might hold him accountable. And this is just the start. And as FBI director nominee, he's chosen someone whose primary qualification, in my view, is his willingness to say yes when everyone else would say no to whatever the president wanted, to say whatever he wanted, to do whatever he wanted. That's why he is sitting here. I mean, look at the people who held that job before Mr. Patel, the stature of the people that held that job, the qualifications of the people that held that job. And how can any of us think that his background, his qualifications hold a candle to the people who went before him. How did we get here where we are defending a nominee like this, who makes songs with convicts who attack law enforcement? How did we get here? And where are we going? History is littered with democracies that lost their freedoms and didn't notice it while it was happening.
Your time's
Let's
up.
not be one of them.